Presented by Best Coast Speech. We are a platform for providing better digital resources for speech and language. And our topic today is eliciting communication, and specifically eliciting communication using voice technology. So as I said, my name is Mark Engler. I am a speech therapist. I work with students in grades K through 12 and have also worked in early intervention, enjoy kids of all ages, and I have a special passion for product development. And Leslie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a tech entrepreneur who works in voice. My company does voice for small data. So we enable people to make it work for their particular data set instead of the world's data set, which can get mixed up in the audio and things like that. And I've been exploring animation and audio, and that's how I met Mark. And we're going to explore that topic together now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so where should we begin? I think probably the easiest place to start is what is voice plus animation? I'm sure all of you are familiar to some extent with what voice technology offers us as far as speech to text and as far as being able to communicate with Siri. But voice plus animation offers whole new opportunities. Um, so, in our previous conversation, Leslie, you described voice as an input modality. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Right. Well, there are different ways to interact with the computer, right? And until tradition, we've been doing touch, right, and typing and things like that. But now the technology has come of age, and we can interact with our voice, right? Which totally bypasses the designer and the menus and all that stuff, and gets you right to where you want. Hopefully, so that it's really an exciting time. Actually, we're kind of in a renaissance, I think, of technology. And I think there's some really great applications for education, right? So now
Absolutely.
we can engage students, and especially, I think, in your field. So we can engage students in a way we couldn't quite before.
So, when it comes to eliciting communication, as speech therapists, we have several challenges. Um, so, first off, we have what I call the grandpa problem, and that's interrogation versus conversation. So, maybe as a kid, you remember going to grandma and grandpa's house and you got the string of WH questions, how is school? What have you been doing? Where have you been going? Who have you met? All of these different questions. And in some ways, all of those questions elicit communication. But on the other hand, they can be very overwhelming and they can cause kids who struggle with communication to just shut down, right? They may not necessarily want to engage in a question answer interrogation format, which I view as very natural. The other challenge that we see all the time in therapy is eliciting communication in a natural way and in a way that is naturally motivating. So, we are all motivated by whatever we are motivated by, right? So whether it's Thomas the Train, baseball, soccer, whatever it is, we may not communicate at all about something we don't care about, but maybe you can't get us to shut up about that one thing that we are absolutely passionate about. Um, so that brings us to our last challenge, but also an opportunity, which is sharing context with the kids that we see. So sharing context uh, is is not only a challenge as I mentioned, but it also helps to facilitate some different things, right? So, for example, when we're reading a book together and we have a shared context, it makes communication, especially with those kids with reduced intelligibility, so much easier because we know what they're referring to. It's easier to get a back and forth conversation going. But in many environments, especially during distance learning, it can be really difficult to create a natural context. Um, Real briefly, to just highlight how Best Coast speech helps to elicit communication through shared context, I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we do. Here, let me share my other screen. we use high definition real photos. Photos are much more effective in eliciting communication and getting kids to think about their own experience and then, of course, to talk about those experiences. Here we have a video of jumping and a little girl jumping in a puddle. And these kinds of things are what make kids want to communicate, right? They've probably jumped in a puddle before. They've probably seen the leaves falling before. And so that is a much more powerful way to elicit communication when you can evoke that real world experience. So that brings us back to how we can find some solutions in technology. Um, so we want to follow the client's lead. We want to follow their motivations. We want to follow their interests and introduce powerful motivators. And then, regardless of what context we're using, what reward we're using, we're wanting to make that action contingent on communication. So we want them to communicate to their fullest extent in order to get what they want, right? So here we have some key facts about voice technology, and we're going to talk about how we can create context. And let me back up a little bit because I skipped a little bit too fast. Um, let's talk a little bit about how we can use technology to elicit communication and set up the scenario for that child. I'm going to turn back to you, Leslie. I'm going to put you on the spot. When it comes to creating context and sharing that context with the child, and motivating them to communicate, how can voice technology help out with that?
Well, it's engaging, right? Well, I'm coupling voice with animation, so
Yeah,
it's a direct experience for the child to be able to talk to the computer and see something as a result, which is kind of agency, right? Which
yeah,
which is very satisfying. So, and you talked before about meeting them where they're at.
hmm,
So, if the particular child is into trains or I don't know robots or gardens, right? You can animate, a garden, or you can animate, trains. Oh, look out! You know, switch tracks. You could make it a game, which would respond, which is much more compelling than having your teacher say, "Okay, now say hello," and
yeah,
it's as I think as you said, if you can build it into a natural situation where they're talking, that just seems really powerful to me.
now tell me a little bit more about animation itself. So when I think animation, I tend to think of cartoons. Is that the limit of the kind of animation that we're talking about?
Right, right. Yeah, no, yeah, it can be very confusing, right? Because voice plus animation, it's like, wait, what's the big deal? That's been around forever. But the
Mhm.
difference is the user is controlling the animation with their voice, right? They're doing the action on the screen. Um, in my field, there's a difference between animation and motion graphics. So motion graphics could be uh, uh, your logo being small and then big, or a piece of paper being crumpled up and put into a trash can. It
Uh-huh.
communicates. It communicates what's going on in a way that still doesn't. A still frame doesn't. It's actually, I think, it's a language. It's a language that
Yeah,
we've begun to explore in tech. How can we communicate with this new? A lot of tools are becoming more framework oriented, more streamlined for non-technical users, and that's
yeah.
my goal. And so, how can you, as subject matter experts, use these technologies to communicate in a way and be creative with your students in a way you weren't able to before? Um,
Absolutely. Well, this is really exciting to me because I have to say that for probably 90% of the kiddos that I work with, when I'm providing some sort of support, some sort of scaffold for language, it is almost always visual. That it tends to be the more powerful modality
right.
for learning for these kiddos that we work with.
I mean,
Um, Here, let me go back to our presentation here. Okay, so let's cover some of the key facts about voice technology. Um, One thing that I was really interested to find out, Leslie, is that speech analysis now includes both semantic and phonetic analysis. So, from what I understood from our previous conversation, um, now these algorithms, these natural language understanding algorithms, they understand the intent of what is being said. So they're capturing the meaning, and they're also capturing just the sound of what's being said. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. And there's just a natural tie-in with your field here. It just seems
Yeah.
kind of beautiful, right? To be able to see. I mean, you could even put a mouth on screen and watch it making the sounds based on how the particular person made that sounds. So there's just a kind of a beautiful synergy there.
Absolutely. Um, and then, as far as access modality and user interface, I know these are somewhat technical terms, but pardon me. But I know that all of us have experienced using a brand new platform, using a brand new website, and being unfamiliar with the tools that are there, and just having a tough time accessing the content. How does voice function as an access modality?
Right. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. I talked about that a little bit earlier. Is you kind of bypass the designer and the engineers and you go straight to the content. So if the content, suppose you're at Starbucks, you know, it knows the context, you know the context, you're there to get coffee, you get the coffee. You ask the questions that are appropriate for that particular venue. Um, and it's a much faster, enjoyable experience. And it can cut down, if we did it in our work environment, it can cut down on a lot of overhead and create more productivity because you don't have to learn every darn interface.
Yeah, which is such an obstacle, and I gotta say, during distance learning, that hits home more than ever. So yeah, it seems like absolutely the fastest way to get and to process information, right? We use
Right.
communication every day. Yeah,
Right. There's statistics on that, right? The fastest way actually to get information, to give information is voice, to ask for things. That's you can do that faster than you can type. The fastest way to get it back is, at least you can process it mentally faster than you can type. The fastest way to get it back is visually. You can process things visually much faster than you can through audio. Plus, audio, you have to remember things, audio alone.
yeah.
Puts a, and it's not as engaging. Um, so,
So with voice plus animation, we are really giving kids the best shot at communicating what they want and making sure that they understand that feedback. Does that sound correct?
but plus it can be targeted. It can be targeted to the child, and it can be your vision, right? Your particular business, your particular way of doing things. You can express your creativity through
Yeah.
these things. Yes.
That's really exciting. As far as the variety of modalities is concerned, transactional, interactive, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Right. Well, this is just kind of the history of how voice tech has played itself out. It didn't necessarily have to be this way, but it was this way. So we started with transcription, right? Okay, here we go. With Nuance and Dragon in 1995. It's really old tech at this point, but you could speak and you could see it on the screen. It was pretty buggy, but there it is. And then Siri, and I was on one of the original Siri teams, did in 2010 was more transactional. So it was like, find me gas stations nearby. Is there an Italian restaurant open now? You know, it was kind of one-off questions and things like that. And then we got into more conversational style with Alexa. Alexa, find me recipes for apple pie. Can I
Hmm.
substitute? Um, I don't know, shortening for butter. Questions like that. So you can have an ongoing conversation about it. And then Google Voice has been coming and going in different modalities, and it's doing a lot of search things, and we're expecting to see great things from them. And they're also in the Alexa field too with the speakers. So that's kind of the way it's processed. And now I think you're into interactional, where it's not just conversation, but it's engaging you for both visually and with your content. So I think we're going to be into a new way to interact with content.
This is really exciting. So let's move away from the presentation for just a moment, um, and tell me a little bit about this newest project that you've been working on.
Right. I call them Annie blocks, and they're little animated creatures that the students can interact with. And I'm exploring this myself. I don't have all the answers. So I'm really looking forward to if people can ask questions, what their take is on this. Is it going to be valuable in this field? Do you see it being valuable in different fields? What excites you and what, like, okay, that's not going to work? That I would really be interested in that. Um, So I'm actually using all standard technologies, all standard web technologies. So you could create these creatures and they could work everywhere. They could work on your phone. They could work, um, they could work on the web. They could on your laptop. They could work any place there's a web, which means it can be integrated into other interfaces as well. So
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of interesting, and it'll work on multiple platforms. Um,
Now,
so I think it's interesting. Mhm.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I know this particular use case is targeted at helping kids.
Yes.
Do you feel like there's an opportunity for adults there as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no. It Motion graphics is extremely powerful. I mean, think about it. Suppose as it communicates, right? Suppose you're a
Mhm.
technician or you're an electrical grid and now analyzer, for lack of a
Yeah,
better word,
yeah,
right? What happens if I put a substation here? What happens to the grid? You could see what was lit up, where there's problems, and then you can interact with your voice. Okay, what's happening over there in 91639, right? And that's a code. Okay, what
yeah,
happens if I do this? And you place something there. So think of the power with that. Um, it just seems very powerful to me.
yeah. That could take us all kinds of different places. Yeah,
Right. It
and
allows you to specify what you want, what you're interested in, and then it allows you to explore in a way that's compelling and easy to understand.
yeah,
So,
that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit more about um, what this can offer adults versus kids. So, for our adult clients who may have suffered a stroke, maybe they've suffered a traumatic brain injury, um, I wonder if this could provide an opportunity for focused practice without judgment. So, if you know you have an adult on your caseload who is working on just communicating basic wants and needs, if they have the opportunity to practice with some kind of a feedback on their own and not be embarrassed of whatever communication capacity that they've lost. If they're able to have increased access to technology because of using just voice to interact with software, what an incredible opportunity there. And then also to receive constructive feedback from some kind of an animation, right?
right. Yeah.
Um, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that's great. I mean, the end goal, hopefully, is human to human communication.
Yeah,
But using the computer when you feel awkward, or for autistic spectrum, people who may not be as comfortable, it seems like a really great fit, um, to learn to overcome something and work with the tech as it is.
yeah, absolutely. So we've covered a few benefits, right? Natural language elicitation, engaging both kids and potentially adults in the content that's being presented. Um, we haven't touched on possibilities for socio emotional learning, and I thought you had a really unique idea with "What's Wrong, Annabelle." Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So one of the characters I've been developing is called Annabelle, although I'm calling her Annabelle these days, so we'll see what wins in the long run.
I like
But
it.
yeah. um, I was wondering if this could be, you know, how like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? If there's a theme, what's wrong with Anna Bear? Or and you see this bear and he's moping around and you're like, and then you can engage and try to figure it out. And that may be very compelling for kids, you know, what's wrong. And he gives you little clues, or she little clues by what their actions, you know, maybe they're hiding, or maybe they're you know, looking very down in these. So I was thinking that could be a possible game, ongoing game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that ability to read body language is so crucial. Yeah, I could see that being a really engaging way to teach some basic socio-emotional concepts. Um, and then as far as social language goes, as far as that those rote social routines that we go through every day. Hi, how are you? I'm doing good. Those kinds of things. There could be many opportunities built into this technology so that kids have the ability to practice independently. And then, what a great opportunity as well for instructive feedback. And you've already mentioned a couple use cases there, Leslie, that I really liked as far as being able to show pronunciation on the lips. So maybe I produce a sound and it's not quite the target sound that we want to elicit. If I could see an animation showing me the corrected lip position, that could be extremely helpful.
Yes, it could. Yes, it could.
So just to kind of recap, some of the benefits that we've explored. So language, it unlocks a spontaneous mind, right? And voice with animation provides a spontaneous shared context where all the action hinges on communication.
Well, I was going to say one thing. One of the other things you could do with kids is you could put in their information, right? So the character could say, "Hey, David," you know, or he could mention things that David likes, and I think that also would help engage children.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anything that helps to individualize and personalize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think
Um,
a couple videos. These are just, you know, kind of explorations. I'll let people know that they're not polished yet. They're just beginnings of how this might work.
yeah, here, I'll go ahead and play this first video.
Hi, Annabelle Bear. Hi, Annabelle. Hi, Annabelle. There she is. Go back. Go back. Sit on a chair, Annabelle. Sit under the chair, Annabelle. Clear screen. Clear screen. Dance bear. Wiggle bear. Wiggle bear. Say no. Say no, Annabelle. Annabelle, smile. Annabelle, smile. Annabelle, smile. Smile. Show controls. Show controls. So here's how to set up a lesson. It's not quite finished yet, but there's different things like settings which allow you to add features. Interesting. Paraphernalia, if you will. There's a video playing here, so you get the controls that show up when you hover, which allows you to stop and start the video. Eventually, maybe able to add your own video. So that'll be fun. And then there's criteria like success. What constitutes success? Once you add a particular step, is it the exact phrase? Is it the exact phrase but mixing up the order, or some other variation? Here are all the actions that are available. You can test them out by clicking on things. That's a fun one.
That's a fun one.
So
So
you create a
you
step.
create a step.
The child
The
needs
child
to
needs to
say
say
what you said in this step
to
to the
the
specifications
specifications
you
you
determine,
determine,
like
like
very
very exact
exact
or
or
not
not exact.
exact.
And
And
the
the
bear
berry
either
does
does
the
the action
action or gets
some
some
type
type
of
of
indication
indication
that
that
they
he
didn't
didn't
get it
get it
right.
right.
So
So here's another one. Let's see.
right.
Right.
So we got that.
So we got that. We got
drops
Jackson Hole.
Obviously, we're just
Starting
starting
to
to
build this out.
So
So
yeah.
All right, and we have one other video that we'll take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and let me make sure I'm sharing my audio. 1 second.
I heard the last time.
I think I was sharing through a different spot there.
Oh no.
There we go.
Good morning, Annabelle. How are you, Annabelle? Oh no, what's wrong? Oh, you're shy. Are you thirsty? Okay, no, that's a no. Um, are you hungry? Okay.
I love that interaction.
Yeah, it's pretty primitive graphics, which actually leads to another idea. I'm thinking high school students could be creating the tech, and then the subject matter experts will be putting it together for their application. I want this, and this in this order, and then the students use it. That's a little bit pie in the sky, but that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it opens up so many possibilities, and for me at least, it triggers so many new ideas that it's really fun to think about. Um,
Yeah, no, that's what I'm interested in. Does it seem something that is exciting and can people can use it in their practice? Yeah, I would love to hear that.
um, so I have a brief survey, and I would love to hear some of your opinions about what we've presented here.